Hey, what's up, guys? You're listening to the It Takes a Village podcast. I'm Ashley, your host. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Hey, what's up, guys? Me and the Hubs are back on the podcast for another marriage full disclosure episode. Today we are talking about, or in this episode, we're talking about romance. Keeping it alive in your marriage, I guess.
Yep.
Okay. So this particular topic is really important to our marriage and to us as a couple and individually. And I feel like it's what really helps our relationship to flourish and to stay connected and to keep that whole, like, you know, quote unquote spark alive. Even though I believe that the spark that you feel with dating is naturally not supposed to be the same when it's in marriage, and that doesn't mean that it's less or that it's more. It just means that it changes and it becomes a different kind of intentionality with your marriage.
Well, it's like an iPhone. Like
What?
Yeah, I know. It just came out of left field, but it came to me while you were talking about it. So when you get a new phone, your brain creates chemicals that makes you feel excited.
Euphoria.
Because it's new.
Right.
And so you have all of this excitement that's not there even a month later.
Right. Because you've already went through all the things.
Right. But it gives you the exact same functionality.
Right.
But you're like, this is awesome.
Been there,
I got
done
the
that.
iPhone X.
Yeah.
And then a month later, it's just like, yeah, it's a phone. Like, it does what I need it to be.
Right. But you've already done the thing.
Yeah, so if you're expecting your marriage to feel exactly the same way,
right,
5 years into it as it did on day one,
right,
or not just even marriage, but even just relationship, because relationships, like when you meet a new person, and it's
it's new and it's exciting.
I've never known anybody like this. Like she does.
Where have you been all my life?
Yeah,
and I think what messes us up, and we're probably going off already in far left field, but what messes us up is that rom-coms, romantic movies tell us that it should be this like sparks, and I've talked about this in other previous episodes, especially the episodes that pertain to sex that are really good, and you guys should definitely go check out. But is that society and movies tell us that, you know, sex, everything, kisses, hugging your spouse, holding hands, it should be like this butterfly effect, and you know, and it should be magical, and it should be big, and it should be grander, and it should be lingerie and lace and candlelit and all these things. And then when your marriage doesn't look like that, you feel like you're already failing. Like you already feel like it doesn't amount. You feel like you're supposed to feel all these things, and because you don't, that you don't have that in your marriage. But the truth is, you probably do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to compare your marriage to 50 Shades of Grey,
right,
which is written in a way to revoke a very specific response from the reader, like, yeah, there's going to be differences, obviously.
Right. Like, and then we get confused about what we want, because I'll be honest, I read those books and I thought that I wanted those things because it made it sound so wonderful and exciting and daring and dangerous and all these like unknown things. And then when you like, okay, what does that look like in my marriage? And then when you like try to see how that fits in, or even try to experiment with that, then you're like, oh wait, like, no. I don't want any of that. Like, let's just go back. Let's just go back and like do normal people things. Like, you know, so, but how do we keep the romance alive in our marriage?
So,
and do you think we're always that great at it? Like, let's start from the beginning of how do you even approach this? Like, so
first of all, when we initially talked about this conversation and this topic, I felt like at the beginning of a relationship, it was great. Like, it was perfect.
Right, because it was new. Yeah.
Like, just like
it was shiny and it was pretty and it was exciting.
Just like the iPhone example, which I think that as soon as people hear iPhone, like, they're going to be like, that's a terrible example.
Yeah.
But then when you think about it, it's like, okay, that makes sense. Like, when it's new, it feels,
let me check out all its features.
It feels amazing.
Right.
because it gives you that oxytocin, right? And then a month later, even though it's the exact same functionality, it doesn't feel as good.
Yeah.
And so anytime a relationship is new, like there's an excitement because of the unknown, like you said, right? Just because once it becomes unknown doesn't mean it's not any less great. Like it's not any less fulfilling. So the new and excitement and all that at the beginning of a relationship was phenomenal, right? And felt great. And then
you have a baby.
And then we have a baby, right?
And then we have 2 babies.
Fairly quickly, like within a year, right?
Yeah.
And so what that looks like now, like, hey, we're juggling romance and diarrhea and vomit and
activities and
yeah,
all the things and work and dishes and laundry and that means that you have to really, like, I think for us, being intentional with planning. And it sounds so unromantic because in movies they don't say, hey, on Saturdays we date night, or hey, at...
Well, so, like, I want to specifically say it, if I had to put myself in your shoes, I feel like in the early parts of, once you got past the newness,
yeah,
and into the first couple years of marriage, that I probably failed in the romance department. If I'm trying to put myself in your shoes.
Why do you think that?
I think number one, because we weren't intentional about it. And so distinctly I remember, and I think it was probably 3 years ago, that I made the decision to have us scheduled a date night every week.
Yeah.
And
oh yeah, we were like feeling really disconnected.
And so
I think I legitimately came up to you and was like, I don't even feel like we're connecting as a couple or something like that. Or maybe it was you. I don't remember
the timing of those conversations because obviously in marriage, like there's lots of seasons of that.
Yeah.
But I just remember thinking, and it was, I hate even admitting to this, but it was a New Year's resolution essentially. Just because it was the timing of the year.
Yeah.
And I just decided like, okay. And I think
and
it
that's
was
an
2015.
Extreme. That's an extreme of us saying like, we're going to date night every week. But I feel like even as extreme as that sounds, because there's a lot of listeners that are going to hear like a weekly date night and be like, that's impossible. Like, I don't have the budget for that. I don't have a babysitter for that. Like with work and all the things, we don't have time for that. But I think in our season, it 100% made a difference doing it every week for a long time. So
we can't speak to everybody's situation because like everybody's situation is different. For our situation in that moment was my mom was available whenever we scheduled it. And in a lot of cases in that season for us specifically was we were usually scheduling a day or two in advance of me calling my mom and saying, hey, can you watch kids tonight? Or, hey, can you watch kids tomorrow night?
Yeah, on Saturday or whatever.
And so for me, making that decision was, okay, I'm going to call my mom and say, hey, I want to be really intentional about date nights with Ashley this year. Is it possible for you to watch the kids every Friday night or at least every weekend, whether that's Friday or Saturday? And if that's too much, let me know. And we can do every other week or whatever. Like, I don't want it to be a burden on you, but if you want to watch the kids that often and you want to watch the kids every week, does that work for you? And she was like, yeah, like that works for me. I was like, okay, great. And that year, out of the 52 weeks of the year, I bet we probably went on 48 dates.
Yeah, we went on a lot of dates. But it was good. And it was, let me be honest, it was awkward at first. Remember when we first went and we're like, what do we even talk about? Because
I'm glad you brought that up too.
Because it was like starting over, but you're married, so you feel like you know everything, but yet you have
like this is all supposed to feel so new because it's
right. And so I think, and then also you feel like people tell you that you shouldn't talk about your kids on date night. So then it's like, what do we talk about? And then you have this fear of well, we have nothing else to talk about, so we have nothing in common anymore. But I think what we realized really quickly is that, like, this is our life. Like, our kids are our life right now. Work is our life. Like, all these things are our life, and it's okay to talk about all these things. Like, it doesn't dilute our date night, because right now, when we date night, even if we're talking about our kids, we're talking about also things like our future, your work plans, and we're connecting. Like, I think the main point of it isn't what we talk about, but it's the fact that you and I have uninterrupted time to hang up the mom hat,
communicate.
And to hang up the mom hat, the dad hat, into, like, that's when I actually put on skinny jeans, and I, like, you know, that's when I, like, dress up, and I, like, you know, can not be mom for a second. Like, I don't have somebody pulling on my pant leg. I don't have I don't have interrupted conversations with you. It's uninterrupted. It's me looking at you face to face. It's having conversations. It's connecting. It's talking about the hard things sometimes, because sometimes our date nights they were not very good.
Yeah, they ended up in an argument.
Yeah. So, but 100%, I think that, and that was an extreme, us going every week. Fast forward to right now, we alternate between grandparents, to where my mom is the go-to if nobody else can babysit.
Because my mom has a boyfriend now.
Right. And so, like, other things are going on. We rotate between whoever just can, and also our budget, because now we're really intentional about our budget. And so now it's more like once a month. But I think that initially being like, hey, like, we need this. We need to connect. We need to get back to me and you, being like that balls to the wall, like, let's do date night more frequently so we can get back to you and me at the beginning, was good, to where now we could let off a little bit and still get what we need from each other just once a month.
Well, also, just to clarify for anybody that's listening, like, we may go out once or twice a month instead of 4 times a month. Mm-hmm. But even what we're doing right now is a date night.
Right.
Like, our kids are at my mom's place tonight, and we're sitting in front of a fire recording this. And so, like, this is a date night for us, because a date night doesn't mean that you have to go out and spend a bunch of money.
Right.
Like, it can be getting the kids out of the house,
curling up on the
curling
couch,
up by the fire, watching a movie.
Yeah.
And just having that husband to wife connection.
Yeah.
Without the interruptions, and
because
if you're dedicating part of your mental energy to the kids, then you're not dedicating that mental energy to your spouse.
100%, yeah.
And that's where the connection starts. Like, before the physical, before the emotional, like, you have to have that mental connection, and then all those other things fall into place, and then feed each other. And then it's like this flywheel that goes mental, emotional, physical, and then feeds into each other and builds momentum to where your connection gets stronger and stronger and stronger over time. And then when you get into that cycle, then, I mean, it just makes your connection stronger, and it's just such a blessing.
Yeah, and I think you have to do that, because when you're first together, when you're newly married, it's just you and that other person, and so you don't realize, you take it for granted how much you have of each other fully, and then you, like, as soon as you have a kid, it's like you're slammed, and you don't have that time, especially when they're teeny tiny, and, you know, whether you're nursing, I mean, you're just, like, hands on all the time.
So I even want to go further, because obviously our perspective's a little bit skewed because we had a kid fairly early in our relationship.
Right.
Even if you talk about a relationship that a kid doesn't enter the picture in, say, 5 years into the relationship or 10 years into the relationship, like, I think that there's still a quote unquote staleness that sits in, because it's not new, right? And regardless of how you want to interpret that or how you want to dismiss that statement, like, the fact that it's new, the way our brains work.
Yeah. The shiny toy is no longer new.
Yeah. And so it's really easy to, once you fall out of that newness, to get bored.
Yeah.
And so if you don't want it to be bored, you have to be intentional about it. So I think it's really unsexy to say we have a date night on the calendar every week.
But if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, like from a practicality standpoint.
Yeah. Like you have to ask the people, you have to get it in place, you need to make the budget in place. Like us, we have a set aside budget area of our money that is for a date night, knowing that, hey, this is money that we solely put aside for you and I to go and have dinner and have drinks or whatever.
And I look at that money as an investment. Right. So like if we have to replace a certain part of our budget for whatever reason that pops up, whether it's a medical bill or you know, something that we have to pay for the kids or whatever, like date night, like I need to protect a portion of that to make sure we have at least one date night that month to where it's just me and you.
Especially when you have like a busy life and, you know, you guys have all the things going on, because it's easy to just go through the motions and just be like, hi, bye, kisses really quickly and, you know, passing, and everybody's going to and fro, and, you know, and you're not really slowing down and having the moment to look at each other, to acknowledge who they've grown to be, who they've become, and to like continue to get to know that person, and to just look, because there are things that, you know, you notice about somebody that you didn't notice or you don't think about in the passing when your days are so busy. But then when you sit down and have dinner, you're like, oh wow, like, you know, his hair has really gotten gray now, or, you know what I mean?
What
like
a thing
things
to
that
notice. Like that sounds
so
terrible.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, you don't, because you don't pay attention to it. Like you don't.
Fortunately for me, my gray hair is really sexy.
I mean, that's not even, I don't even know what to say. But anyways, I'm just saying, like, these things become like mundane and everyday, and it's things that you don't appreciate, and like you think that you know them and you couldn't possibly know anything else, but then you can. And the thing is, like, I think we even brought questions to our date night. Like, I'm pretty sure I asked questions when we first started date night of like how to create conversation. And it was like stupid questions like, what are your goals for the next 5 years? Or like silly things that you feel silly, but it does create conversation, and then it gets easier.
So on that topic and on that train of thought, and this is kind of derailed, and this is more for your listeners than me, what's one thing that you feel like you're really great at that most people would not think of or think about or associate with you? Like something that would be surprised, you know, if it was someone at work, what would they be surprised about you that you're really good at?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were just like giving this as an example. Okay,
no,
wait.
This is for
Start
your
again.
listeners.
What is something that's about me that other people would be really surprised?
That you're really good at that other people would be surprised of?
That I'm really good at? Probably cooking.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking too.
Oh.
I was wondering if your answer was going to be the same answer that I have, because you're like an amazing cook, and like just some of the dishes that you whip up out of nowhere, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever tasted. And it's
but I
not
low-key like never talk about it.
Never talk about it.
Yeah, because to me it's something that I just do. Like it's not like, oh, like, but it's just something that I just do.
Yeah, and like even the conversation that we were talking about as far as dad's quote unquote babysitting, like one example that I didn't give in that episode is there's nothing that I could make that would be as good as what you would make the kids. I would be able to make them food and they would be able to survive, but it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
And your meals come with like 10 times as more mess than mine does, but that's okay.
But yes, I will clean it up in my time and put the dishes in the dishwasher the wrong way. But it'll get done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the reason I ask that and like give that example as a question is like there are going to be things that you talk about that maybe you haven't talked about. Yeah. That may be random.
Mm-hmm. That you don't even realize that the other person notices about you or like appreciates about you.
Yeah. And so, like, I don't know how many times that I've told you, like, oh my gosh, you're an amazing cook. And talk about with the kids, like, oh my gosh, like, mommy's an amazing cook. Mm-hmm. That you're kind of like, you take that for granted about yourself.
Yeah.
And then there's things that I'm sure that I take for granted about myself that you see or that you notice.
Yeah. Because it's just a part of you. So you feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, the way that I think is just the way that I think, and then the way that I've always thought, and that you may see something really special in. Mm-hmm. Then I'm like, well, yeah, like, that's not a big deal. That's just the way you do it.
Right. So back to the topic though, like, we're not saying that romance is, or here's what I want to say that we're saying as a couple, is that romance is not lingerie, it's not candles, it's not sexy baths, it's not, I mean, like, it can be those things, but
it's awesome when it's those things. But
it's the expectation of, it does not have to be those things. Like, it can be eating mac and cheese on the couch together, but the kids are at grandma's. Like, it can be having a picnic at the park, or having Chick-fil-A at the park and talking about, hey, what do the next 5 years for us as a family look like? Like, it can be going grocery shopping together and, like,
without
the
kids.
Right, without the kids, and talking and connecting, and just having those moments of hanging up the dad hat, hanging up the mom hat, and connecting with each other as a couple.
So I'm going to flip the roles on you. What's an example of a date night that we've done recently? Because I feel like in the last 6 months, we've done a lot of unconventional date nights. What's an example of a date night that we have done that most people would not consider as a date night?
I think that probably some of my date nights have ended up being like the ones where we go walking the trails.
So what does that look like?
That looks like us driving to a park, getting out with our water bottles. Water bottles.
Do they always contain water?
No. Our water bottles contain with beer, or our, whatever. And then having a walking down to...
When she says whatever, she means
beer.
Cider for her. Because
beer,
she can't have beer because of the gluten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, parking the truck at the park, walking the trail to a local restaurant that's off the park, eating, having conversation, walking back. I think we even, like, have slacklined at the park or riding bikes. I think probably some of mine favorite date nights have been just us hanging out at home, like, by the fire. Like, we'll go out to eat, and then I'll realize I just want to hang at home by the fire and drink tea and watch Netflix. I mean, they really...
Netflix and chill.
Yeah.
So, like, the reason I bring that up and the reason I ask that, like, is because
Wait,
I think
are you trying to steal my job as the interviewer?
No.
I'm just kidding. No, go ahead.
But, so, I think a lot of people think that a date has to look like
super expensive.
Or
Or
not
like
even just super expensive, but it
couples
has to look...
massages and dinner, like steak dinners and dressing
Or that
up.
even you have to go to dinner,
Yeah.
right? And so...
Yeah, like I think sometimes we've packed our dinner, haven't we? No.
Yeah, and like there was one time where we went to Central Market.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And picked up
bought a bottle of wine, got a couple things to eat, and then went and just had a picnic at the park.
Yeah.
And so... And then there have been other times where we do go out to eat. Mm-hmm. And then in the beginning, when we first started doing date night, it was we would go out to eat and then we would go somewhere after and have drinks afterwards.
That's way too expensive.
And then come home.
Yeah.
And then so like there have been other times where we go out to eat and then we go grocery shopping.
Yeah, that's true. And that has been super helpful. Like I think that when a date night is both like really... just basic, like when it helps your needs, like for me it's fulfilling in that, oh wow, like we got this done together, we knocked this out together, and now I don't have to do it tomorrow. Like I don't have to do it another trip separately on top of all the other things. And
this is going to sound probably super corny, but there have been other times where like we have gone to the grocery store and before I lost my AirPods, like we each have an AirPod in listening to music
Yeah.
And we take a drink to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Which sounds super silly, super juvenile. And it's like, but it was just fun.
Yeah.
And it was a way to change up the routine a little bit.
Like
do something that was
yeah.
helpful for you.
Right.
But at the same time, make it feel like it's not just I gotta go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And so getting that done without the kids together.
Make sure you don't have a see-through water bottle, though, guys. We're not alcoholics either. Let me.
Yeah, it's just a way to like make it feel different.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, hey, we're gonna go get wasted going to groceries, but it's like, how can we? I think that romance, everybody's expectation is that it's spontaneous. Mm-hmm. And that's great and phenomenal when you're in a new relationship. But when you're going 10 years strong, like you have to be intentional about it. Yeah. And so there are intentional choices that we make.
Yeah.
That sounds silly. And if
that makes us feel like the giddy, like we're being silly, like to not be so serious and caught up in the routine and every day. And
so like, I think you have to leave at the door what society or what other people would think and just figure out like, okay, what does this make us feel like in the moment? Because I would say it's completely ridiculous, 21-year-old me,
to go grocery shopping for a date night.
Yeah. Like that's dumb.
Yeah.
But when you have 2 kids, when you have stuff that needs to be done over the weekend to make sure that the week goes smoothly, not only is it practical, but it allows us to have a connection.
Or like when we go to Target and you're like pushing me on the cart and I'm standing on the cart and you're running through Target.
Yeah. And that's not every date night.
No. But like it's just, I think that's important to be silly together, to be intentional with connecting with each other, to not be so serious that you're too afraid to ask these like questions that you think you already know the answers to, of like, you know.
Yeah, so like this question and this topic of romance and like, is romance dead inside of marriage? I think
it doesn't have to be.
It shouldn't be.
Right.
And if you feel like romance is dead in marriage, then there's action that you need to take inside of your marriage. So it's not necessarily, it has to look like,
and even when your kids go
50
to sleep,
Shades of Grey, it doesn't need to look like
right.
My best friend's wedding. It doesn't need to look like P.S. I Love You. It doesn't need to, well, it's just a rom-com.
Right.
And it looks different than all these other, so it doesn't need to look like a movie or a rom-com, and it doesn't have to feel like it's brand new.
And it also doesn't need to look like anybody else's date night.
Right.
You have to do what's perfect for you.
Yeah.
Or what's right for your marriage. And what's going to fulfill you both and fill your cups up. Like, I think that, like,
for some couples, it could be going to a horror movie.
Right.
Which would be terrible for me and you because you hate that.
Yeah.
Some people could be going to a monster truck rally.
Right.
I don't think that would be what you're into. So, but like, it's going to look different for every couple.
Yeah.
And forget what society says it should look like. Mm-hmm. And just do what feels good to you as a couple. But you have to be intentional about it. It's not going to be spontaneous.
Because at the end of the day, you're not married to everybody who's on the outside of your marriage.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to make or break your marriage. But what is going on within your marriage make or breaks your marriage.
And if you're waiting for it to just happen spontaneously, then you're leaving your marriage and the health of your marriage up to chance.
Right. And who's going to plan that? Like,
yeah.
If you're not like, hey, babe, like, let's.
Well, to plan it would be the opposite of spontaneous.
I know. I'm just saying, like, for you to leave it up to somebody, like you're just hoping somebody makes it happen, or some grandparent offers to watch the kids. Like, no, you need to find somebody. Or even if you have like 5 kids and you're just like, grandparents won't watch them because they don't live here and we can't afford to have a babysitter, like, I would totally agree. And then I would say you need to be intentional about putting them to bed early or figuring out a way like to where then at nighttime it's like we're going to have dessert together. We're going to sit in our room and have a movie, have wine. And on a Saturday night, we're going to stay up a little bit later. Or, you know, like having a day night in the house after the kids have gone to bed.
Or even, yeah, if you have 5 kids, it requires a babysitter. Like, it's going to be more expensive if you don't have family available. And we were really, really blessed in that allowed us to do once a month.
Right.
But if we weren't doing once a month, we could have at least afforded to hire a babysitter once a week.
Right. Once a month.
Is what we were able to do. We could have done at least once a month and been able to afford a babysitter.
Yeah.
Or you can put the kids to bed early, sit by the fire, drink wine, and record a podcast.
Yeah, we didn't do any of those things though. Our kids we didn't have to.
You should edit that out.
Yeah. Probably so. Yeah, so I think with romance, I think it doesn't have to look like what's in the movies. It's totally up to what you guys need. I think knowing your love languages is also
Hold
helpful.
on, can I clarify that?
Okay, go ahead.
It won't look like the movies.
Okay, that's true.
Like,
that's fair.
don't
even expect it to look like.
Yeah, it's not gonna look like the movies. Maybe it'll look like the movies for the first month.
Yeah.
And then lose that expectation.
And that's okay though. Like, I think that you feeling shame or guilt or doubt about what's going on in your marriage in regards to what the
it's it's like body image and
Right.
the airbrush models in Cosmo. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the exact same thing.
Right.
Like, if you expect your body to look like somebody who's been airbrushed,
then you're comparing yourself to like false.
something that's completely unrealistic.
Right.
Is the same thing of
That's
comparing your relationship to a rom-com, which is a movie written by Hollywood writers that's
Made
only
to give you those endorphins and that.
it's
2
only
hour,
written to make money.
Right. Yeah. That's
Like, I am writing the most perfect story to make hundreds of millions of dollars.
right.
This is what you're comparing your relationship to. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's
Which
impossible.
at the end of the day, those are actors, and that story does not continue to go on after. Like, I think we get caught up in that. Like, after you get out of the movies, like, your marriage does continue to go on for years and years,
Yeah.
and so like you have to nourish it.
And also, like, this almost sounds like a doom and gloom. Like, you'll never have a rom-com. I feel more grateful and better about our relationship more than I did 10 years ago when it was new and it was exciting.
Yeah.
Like, it's not new anymore. I don't get the same brain chemical newness situation
Right.
from a physiological standpoint, but from like an emotional connection, like building, like best friend, like all of the really
Deep and more meaningful.
yeah,
Like,
it's just blows all of that away,
yeah.
right? And if I'm just chasing that new chemical, physiological,
Like flame. I hate when people say
reaction.
like, "Is the flame still alive?" Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
like-
think that. Or is the spark alive? Then when you think spark, it's like, no. Like, I don't know. I think it goes along with the media thing of like, it has to be big and it has to get tingly and.
well, I mean, and this may even be like revealing too much, like from when you talk about like a conversation of sex, like where we're at now there is even more fulfilling than we were in the beginning, even
Right.
though in the beginning it was exciting because it was new.
Yeah.
There's a deeper connection
Yeah.
sexually there now than there ever
So,
was
okay,
before.
so to sum up this episode of Romance in Your Marriage, we are saying or recommending that hands down date nights is where it's at.
I think that's where it starts. I don't think that's the end all be all, because if you just do that without intention to take it further, then I think that you're not going to end up where you want to be. But I think if you are intentional about scheduling date night and intentional about scheduling romance, quote unquote romance.
What I think is helpful too is knowing your spouse's love language. So how you
Yes.
how you pursue your other person is how they're gonna get their love tank full. So you have date night, and then that means if their love language is receiving gifts, then that means that you're going out of your way to bring them home a little surprise or leave them a surprise in their car, or or if it's quality time, then date nights is where it's at because that gives them quality time. Or if it's loves or words of affirmation, then it's you making sure to verbalize that to them.
So I'll take it a step further, and I can't speak to any of the other love languages because mine is physical touch. But for me, physical touch, and I think a lot of people automatically associate that with kissing or sex or anything in that realm. Mm-hmm. But literally for me, even Ashley just running her fingers through my hair or just giving me a hug or anything like that starts to fill my love tank. And that is part of romance.
And that takes intentionality, because if it's not your love language, for me, I have to go out of my way to see moments of opportunity of where I could just randomly put my hand on your shoulder or hold your hand or squeeze your hand or all these things, because I'm not a touchy-feely person. So I have to really push myself to seize those opportunities to connect with you and to do those things.
And Ashley's love language is random. It's
I don't know
the
why you
roll
like
of the
to tell
dice.
everybody this. You like to tell everybody this.
It's either words of affirmation quality time or acts of service.
Yeah, they just continually rotate. So I think that it's good because
it's like Russian roulette.
Yeah, mine rotates depending on the season we're in. If we have all the time in the world to date night, but yet we haven't had time to I feel overwhelmed in all the things that I have to carry, or that I feel all the loads, then that's when acts of service become top of the line for me, because my love tank is full on quality time, but I feel like all these things are piling up that I need to do and I need help. And so that's when that becomes a priority for me. So if you haven't tested your love languages, I suggest you do, and you can just Google five love languages Gary Chapman, and his website will show up, and then you can take the quiz. There's even a quiz for kids, which is also really awesome. But yeah, I'd really suggest doing that. And I think that's it, right?
Yeah, so for romance,
5 love
languages, first of all.
Yeah.
And then schedule a date night.
Yeah. Totally agree.
And have it recurring, whether that's once a week, twice a month, or once a month, whatever your budget and or
babysitter situation.
Yeah, logistics can accommodate.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? If you like what you've been hearing, make sure to email me or DM me and let me know at theashcarroll@gmail.com. Also, if you're a fan of what we're doing in general with the podcast or with the blog, make sure you go to patreon.com, search It Takes a Village, and you can support us over there. And make sure you review and rate us on iTunes or whatever podcast app that you listen to. All right, guys, catch you next time.